I was a little confused. I saw a Gallup poll, largest
Hmm.
decline in adult religiosity, I think, ever recorded,
Yeah, this was
juxtaposed with the New York City conversions, especially among Gen Z. So, how should we read all of these studies coming out about religiosity and
Yeah,
Catholicism, et
this is a
cetera?
good question. And this came up in conversation with a couple of friend groups that I'm in the last couple of weeks. Because on the one hand, we have all this vibe of like Gen Z getting back to church, more Catholic conversions, and we've covered that on the deep. We've covered that here a lot. But then we get a poll like this, and actually the Loop this morning was a perfect sort of snapshot of this seeming disparity that's going on here. So we have this Gallup poll that says we've had the largest decline. And I'll just go through this one first, but we have the largest decline in adult religiosity. I'm losing it here. The Gallup poll reveals that the share of U.S. adults who say religion is an important part of their daily life dropped from 66% in 2015 to just 49% in 2025. Now, that's a 17-point plunge. And this kind of a shift is really almost unheard of. Only 14 out of 160 countries included in the study have dropped or risen more than 15 points in that 10-year time frame. So a 17-point shift is very dramatic, one of the greatest globally. And it places the US closer to secularized countries like France and the United Kingdom than to the rest of the world. So the rest of the world, if you go global, about 86% of people around the world say religion is an important part of daily life. Now the United States is farther from that number and closer to sort of the extreme secularism of Western Europe. So I wanted to compare this with the numbers from my favorite religion numbers guy, Ryan Berg. And his data is much more long term. So this was a 10-year study. And I like him because he gives us like a half century to century kinds of numbers to understand the bigger context for this.
Ryan Burge,
Ryan
right?
Burge. Sorry, I always say Berg and it's Burge, the E at
Well,
the
I mean, it's
end.
like just you
It's
said
the
it
G
so
soft
quiet too. It's like we're
phonics.
not talking about my Brian Birch. We're talking about Ryan
Who's
Burge.
feeling good with
Ryan
the Bears on top of the
Burge.
division? But all right, continue.
Yeah, he texted me
Okay.
right after the game.
Oh yeah, I figured. Yeah, freaking Brian.
Right. So he gives good going to America alone. He gives us a good context here. So he looks at religious affiliation over the last 40 to 60 years. And we talked a lot in the early 2010s about the rise of the nones, so people who are not affiliated with any religion. And while that continued to rise through the 2010s, now it seems to be plateauing, right? So we have the Gallup numbers, we have plunging religiosity. Ryan Burge, we have a sort of plateauing, perhaps a slowing down of the decline when it comes to affiliation and saying, I don't belong to any religion. So we have two not so great trends. But then we get these smaller scale stories like the Brooklyn Diocese. And this was the other piece that was profiled in the Loop this morning. So, in the Brooklyn Diocese, adult entries into the Catholic Church roughly doubled from 2024 compared with 2023. So again, you start to like put these percentages in your head. Okay, wait a minute. So US adults are 17% less religious in daily life, but then we have this diocese that's like 50% growing, doubling. Um, so for example, they had 538 adults entered the church in 2024, nearly twice the 2023 number. Then we also have these stories from the Pillar that we covered back in May. They reported a surge in the numbers of aspiring Catholics registering to join the church last Easter of 2025. Lansing, Michigan, for example, reported a 30% spike from the previous year, 633 converts, which
Wow,
is the highest they've ever seen. So we get these.
I don't like that. I mean, it's an
Yeah.
anomaly. Hillsdale College, they're getting a ton of converts. So.
It's because of St. Anthony's
I
and
mean,
he's
that's a
from
good
Michigan.
thing. I mean,
That's a great thing.
obviously,
What? Yeah, why are
but
you
it's an
talking that down, dude?
anomaly.
That's sick.
Yeah.
It is awesome.
Shout out Hillsdale.
Yeah. So I think like what we're looking at here, just to help people understand, are these in contradiction to each other? But we have these macro studies which seem to indicate increasing secularism in our country. But we have these kind of tinier micro success stories in individual dioceses. So on one level, we're talking millions of Americans. On another level, we're talking these pockets of hundreds, maybe moving in a different direction. So that's the way you want to think about the stories. And for me, it makes sense. I mean, just historically looking back at the last 2 millennia of the church, Christianity, Catholicism doesn't do so well when it's flourishing and it's the majority and like everything's comfortable and you're all doing great. We tend to get fat and happy and complacent, which I think is what the phenomenon that we see with sort of the 1960s and the boomer, like the seminaries are full, we're building all these churches and all these schools, and then crash, right? But when things are tough, when there's less of a secular narrative of success, when there's less cushion in what the state can offer and what our culture can offer, and right now it's not a lot, right? Then you start to have these smaller pockets of conversions because that's where the church is offering meaning, purpose, and a real culture in life. And people respond to that in small scale, not necessarily always in great revivals, although it can happen. Read Acts 7.
So what Ryan Burge was saying is that these stories that you see, let's say Washington Post or New York Post or Fox News of these Gen Z youth embracing the
Pre-press,
traditional religions, and he's like, and he was kind of throwing some cold water on it. And I'm like, okay, well, first of all, you're talking about major headwinds. So we're having lots of Catholics who haven't gone to church in a long time that are dying off, right? So we're losing members that way, but did they go to church much?
Yeah, affiliation's not always the best.
And they had kids that were Catholic, and some of them hardly ever went either. So we're getting like a couple of generations of people who aren't going to church on a regular basis. So my grandmother and grandfather went to church almost every day, certainly every week, and they had 11 children, and I don't even know how many of those 10 children were at mass on Sunday, and then they had those of their 30 plus grandchildren. I might have been one of the only ones that went to mass on Sunday. So,
wow.
In terms of raw numbers, you're dealing with a situation where a lot of people are, would answer on a survey. If you ask all my aunts and uncles, they'd say Catholic, but they go to church on, maybe. I'm not trying to talk crap about my family. I love my family, okay, but I'm just saying I can see.
It's a snapshot of America.
Yeah, it's an illustrative story.
I can see these numbers, and bring them to life. And so to me, when some kid who grew up in a secular home watches a Charlie Kirk video and says, you know what, I'm giving myself over to Christ, and he starts going to church, whether it's evangelical or Catholic, I'm like, massive success, because that, where someone was lost, now they've been found, as opposed to a lot of the Catholics that are leaving the church, they haven't gone in decades, or they've died off, or, whatever. So it's like, to me, these stories are encouraging because we're getting more people who are on fire with the faith, and they're going to inspire other people to join. I think it's a good sign.
From the trenches. I think Pope Benedict's prediction is coming true. We're a smaller, more fervent church, no question, especially from the Catholic perspective. I think I'm curious where this goes because, as Erica pointed out, we don't really live in a Christian society or nation anymore. We like to proclaim our roots and talk about it. I think it's true. I think at one point we really were a Christian society for actually probably a majority of our country's history. That's just not the case anymore. And I think it makes the smaller enclaves of more fervent Catholics, puts them in an interesting position because they are smaller, they're more fervent, they operate in a less friendly to Christianity country than they may have before. And so you're making the point correctly that Christianity does operate better under persecution. It's always flourished during times of serious persecution, like death type persecution. Right. There is a small element of persecution now, obviously not to that level, but in just the friction we have now in the country that we operate in. So I'm curious where this goes. You know what I mean? Because I see I think as Josh is saying, there's kind of a soft evangelization effort and opportunity because as you get more rootless people, that they're more open to the message of Christianity because they have not been fulfilled by the promises that were made before. And there isn't that kind of Christian space anymore that they feel is dominant, is kind of the status quo. So I'm excited for the opportunity as well. I'm just curious where we're going to get more of that friction between the people that are really hardcore and the people that are not Christian at all.
I think the reason why is because for whether it's true or not, whether it's fair or not, for baby boomers, Gen Xers, older millennials, Christianity is not a new thing. It's something that they had left. Whereas
Mhm.
Gen Z is like
Brand
looking
new.
at all around the whole world, the digital addictions and loneliness and atomization of society. And Christianity seems like, wait a minute, this is refreshing. This is a new alternative. And I think that's exciting.